Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back here to the Tech Day at Tiffin. I'm still Jay Holben. Thank you. Man, I seriously can never get enough of that. You know, it's coming up as a thank you. Coming up as an actor, that's like a food for the soul. Just applause. Anyway, I'm back with another extraordinary panel here, talking about, strangely enough, filters. But I am honored to have with me Mr. Xavier Dolleans AFC. I wanted to make sure I got that right because my French is horrible. I was even going to try to say that in French, and I can't. And the legendary Mr. Tiffin Poster ASC. It's a pleasure to have you, sir.
I want to hear that legend. Thank you.
And of course, Jendra Jarnagin. Pleasure to have you here. We actually have a solitary subject to talk about. Solitary? I don't even know if that's a word. A singular subject to talk about today, which is the Tiffin Fog filters. And this is new to me, so I'm going to discover some information and make this really just my curiosity, and you can all just listen along to my own personal conversation with these three experts here. So welcome to my brain. But I am not familiar at all with this whole new line. And Xavier, you did a test with these to be able to compare them. Let's talk a little bit about what you did and what your approach was, and then we'll take a look at it.
Yes, hello. Yeah, I did a very basic test actually for myself. You know, at the camera division, I've seen those filters on Instagram of David Mullen. He tested them like weeks probably before me, and actually they were very interesting. So I was alone, so no model. This is like you are going to see why I'm telling that. But I did a very simple side-by-side comparison with no filter. In the middle, this is a Tiffin Fog, so this is the effect as a maximum effect. And on the side, on the right side, you will see the black fog. So at Tiffin, when you have the black in the name of the filter, most of the time, this is keeping the black consistent, the black level consistent, and still having the effect of the filter. So this is really what I like. For example, I really like the black diffusion effects at Tiffin for this kind of things, trying to keep the black level consistent in a way, you know what I mean? So this is very basic test, but I mean, sometimes this is also good to see the differences.
Yeah, for sure. Obviously, I'm familiar with the traditional fog filters, and there are, and we talked about this a little bit earlier, there are three values that a diffusion filter will bring to it. It's either a change in contrast, a change in halation, or a change in resolution. And what do you find with these new fog filters within those parameters that you're able to maintain or adjust through the filters?
That's a good question. Actually, I think halation, definitively you have more halation, and I think the contrast is reducing with the Tiffin, with the night fog. The more halation and less contrast, and probably a bit less resolution. I'm not sure about that because I didn't measure anything precisely, you know. But with the black fog, you keep your contrast more consistent, but you still have the effect of the halation in the highlights, you know. So, and also they are new if you compare to the fog that we know, they are more subtle. Yeah, I mean, you have gradation, like very subtle gradation that you can feel, and this is more done for the digital world in a way. You can feel this, you know what I mean? This is those fog filter, but more subtle. This is what I can say. And sometimes, you know, pictures are talking more than words.
In the 70s and 80s, yes, I'm that old, we had the double fogs. And they were very popular. I remember Owen Roisman, Vilmos, everybody was using double fogs. And they on film, they were gorgeous. They just had a kind of a luscious halation to them, and a little bit of diffusion in that sense. But and I wanted to find a way to replicate that feeling in digital. So I just do my combos and put 2 filters, 3 filters together and test them, and found a combination that I thought worked. And Tiffin started doing building samples for me, and keep testing, and we modified them several times from there. And I believe they do have the quality of the double fog. The black fogs are of course less, as we saw in terms of the halation, but you'll see something I shot recently with it, and they really give a sense of atmosphere in a way that you kind of can't get unless you use atmosphere, which is not as easy these days as it was in the old days. We could just put cracker oil in the air and there you go. But in fact, I once did a movie where I used Fuller's Earth as diffusion. We didn't know it was cancerous at the time, really. But but I can't shoot without some kind of diffusion. It's not in me. I don't know how to do it. So that's why I kind of came up with this idea.
And why not just go back to the original double fog?
They're too invasive on digital.
Too blunt an instrument.
Yeah. Wanted something much more subtle. So yeah.
That's it.
Say it again. Sorry.
Yeah, I guess because of the recording. Yeah, the old fog filters that were designed for film, they're too blunt an instrument. Like even the lightest grades of them are way too heavy-handed, and that's why almost nobody uses them unless you're doing some very extreme sort of a flashback scene, and then you still can temper it a lot better doing a post effect than baking in something so heavy-handed. So I was excited when I heard that there was a new generation of fog filters with a very big range from 1/8 to 3, and my clips that we'll see later, I use them in a much more subtle way. I only use like the eighths and the halves, so they're pretty versatile. Obviously you saw the heavy ones get heavy, but you can use them as just like like Steve said for atmosphere. But I'll talk more about my clips when we get to them. But I use them more just as like a vibe, or to like just dirty up the image in a subtle way on a TV series that otherwise had an established very naturalistic look.
Yeah, what I liked is because I'm not a big fan of fog filter usually, you know what I mean? But using the black fog, you keep your black level very consistent, and this is something that I really like, this is very important for me when I'm using filter. I don't want to touch to the black level. I don't know, this is personal, but and as you said, actually the 1/8 and the 4th are very interesting. You have the feeling to have some haze in the atmosphere around all the highlights and everything. You put the filter and oh wow, this is smoky, foggy, you don't know from where it comes, and this is really interesting in terms of working in low lights also, for the night.
Thank you. What was the most surprising thing that you discovered doing the test?
I think I was really surprised by the black fog again because of this consistency in the black, and I was really seduced. One of my basic filter kit is black diffusion effects also for those reasons from Tiffen. This is like my basic kit. When I need a diffusion, this is something I'm using a lot, and probably I will add the black fog in my basic kit to add some, the fog. Also, in some places where you can't put any smoke, or fog, like museum, like I don't know, like big.
Bridgerton is using them that way.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
because I can imagine.
because they are shooting in properties, historical properties where they are not allowed to use atmospheric haze, and so they're doing it with these filters.
I did a commercial in France for Patrice. It was the introduction of the Snickers candy bar to Europe. And it was a very strange day, but we were in the city library in France, and they wouldn't let me put smoke in. I can't imagine why, but I was using double fogs at things, of course, on film. But something very funny happened at one point because Snickers is my favorite candy bar. So this guy comes up to me. I'm standing on an apple box at the camera in a high position, and he taps me on the shoulder, and he holds up a Snickers that has a perfect bite out of it. And I said, "Oh, thank you," and I took it. That was the prop. I didn't know that. But it really made the difference in terms of the look with all those windows and the chandeliers and everything.
Well, of course they wouldn't let you put smoke in there because you throw Fuller's Earth in the air. And
yeah, right.
Were you burning tires too? Because that used to be a thing.
I've done that.
Yeah.
I've also burned arcs without the stack on it because in a gym that they wouldn't let us so we could smoke the place up. It's carcinogenic, but again, who knew in those days?
In a pinch, we've had a bunch of people smoke cigars.
Yeah.
And just blow them around the room. But these filters do a much better job.
Yeah.
Without
much more consistent.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Let's take a look at what you brought for us, your footage.
Okay. This is from a movie I just shot called Scared to Death. It was a 20-day horror comedy film. The conceit is that it's a seance that goes bad, and the stuff you're going to see is when the young production assistant is scouting the location with the man that manages the place. He finds out that the manager happens to be a medium, and he convinces the director to have the cast do an actual seance before they go to do the film, and it goes very bad. But it also has a lot of laughs in it, so it's fun. And we shot for 20 days. I shot with a Canon C500 Mark II and black fogs. I started with the number 2 black fog because I want to get some meat into that. I want to not do an eighth or quarter. I want to get a little different. I shot the whole movie at 3200 ASA. Or ISO, whatever you prefer. The Canon allows you to do that because they do 2 things differently with the way they create their chips. If you increase the sensitivity on a Canon camera, they put more voltage to the chip, which nobody else does. It keeps the black level perfectly stable. And doesn't raise the noise level in that sense. But they also do something that's unique where they fire all their photo sites randomly. So you get movement as opposed to fixed pattern. And that starts to look like film grain. So it's a good way of building in the film grain. So these are just a couple of one sequence of when before the power is turned on in the house, they're scouting the location. They have flashlights and stuff. So let's take a look. There's no sound. We're just editing now. So this is taking place during the day.
Really nice halation on the heads of those flashlights.
Yeah.
Sorry, which level fog is this?
2. Number 2 black. So.
And it reads on the face as well. There's a subtle halation that's being picked up, which is nice.
Yeah. Yep. Great. They're just, and all the windows are boarded up, supposedly. So, because it's an abandoned house, but it's not really. It was in the story, it was an orphanage with a very disturbing headmaster. And there was a lot of abuse going on of the children. So there are ghosts, and that's the key to the whole thing. So it gives you an idea of what the filters are doing. Now, yeah, when the ghosts show up, we go to the night fog, or the night
Can we
fog.
scroll forward to that? Do we have that footage?
We don't have that footage.
Okay, then never mind.
This is all we have. But let's see what there's an exterior at the end of this, so we'll take a look at that.
Wow, that's less pronounced than I expected.
This is still the 2?
Yeah, 2 with a polarizer.
It's a black fog.
Black fog, yeah.
Yeah, black fog.
I've never figured out how to shoot outside without a polarizer. So, but you can imagine when it's at the right density.
You're still at 3200.
Yeah, still at 32.
So you have a lot of ND as well.
Well, the camera has 6 stops of ND built in,
Right.
so we just turned it down.
So you cranked up.
That and the polarizer. But it's actually pretty clean. So,
back.
okay.
Thank you for that, sir. Jendra, I probably should have just jumped right into looking at your footage, but let's get a preamble to what you want to show us and why you use what you use.
Sure. We're going to look at some clips from the season finale of East New York, which I was a series cinematographer for. We wrapped in April. So the reason I use them is I just love filters, and it's like, oh, there's new filters, and you'll let me use them. Let me see what they're all about. So I had them for a few episodes and had sort of started dabbling with them, and they really were not finding themselves to be the right fit for the look of our show. But then in the finale episode, we had a lot of different scenes and a lot of different kinds of environments. And the director said that he wanted each of the scenarios to have their own little zhuzh. And I was like, I'll finally get to use those new filters. So as I mentioned before, the show was already established, very naturalistic look. So as I would, and also very, very fast-paced shooting schedule for episodic TV. This is a CBS show, and we only had 7.5 days per episode. So I didn't really have time to, I forgot to ask if I can swear since this is going out to YouTube.
Hell yeah.
Screw around. I'm already censoring myself. I didn't really have time to screw around and try things and then have them not work, and I wouldn't have time to backtrack. So, there were a couple times that I tried some, like one of the clips I wanted to use a night fog, and then it was just too backlit of a situation, and it just totally freaked out. It was just way too heavy-handed, and so I switched down to a black fog. So we've got 4 very short clips. Our scenes in the show averaged about 1 minute apiece. The first scene is in an emergency room, and I used the night fogs. I wanted to basically make the place feel more drab. So I wanted to basically lower the contrast. And the look of our show is a very crisp and punchy, heavy black level show. So even with the filters, the DIT and the LUT and the final color was actually sort of grading out some of the contrast reduction and bringing the black levels back. So, I'm not sure, since everything I did do was very subtle, how much it's going to read that this even has filtration going on, but that was my goal. My goal is I didn't want it to look filtered. I just wanted you to have a feel, and I wanted different scenes to feel different from one another. So, since the clips are so short, I guess we can run them back to back, or at least some of them. The first two. The first one is as I said, a emergency room. Shot 2 cameras. A camera was on the wider lenses. We shot on Venice 1 full frame. So A camera, some of their shots were on a 40 mil and some an 80 mil, and that was actually with a half night fog. That's a pretty heavy choice. And then the B camera was a quarter night fog because they were using longer lenses. They had an 80 and a 135 in the sequence that we're about to do. And then we'll do the basement clip, the basement of a housing project, following that, and that's black fogs, where the Apple camera was on a 28 millimeter with an 1/8 black fog, and B camera was on a 40 mil on a half. So I kept finding that I was using the 1/8 and the half together with A camera and B camera, and not so much the quarter, or else I just kind of didn't see it.
Speaker and cap. Love it.
It's like the benches in a basketball court.
You didn't see anyone get out of a car, ride up on a moped?
Listen, I'm walking through the courtyard, minding my business. I hear some gunshots, duck down, then I get hit anyway.
We can even take the audio down,
Boy.
please. Thank you.
My boy Orlando was killed.
You think you can identify who killed him?
Which one is this?
These are the night fogs, not the most dynamic scene to show, but it was the only example I had of night fogs, so we wanted to leave this in here.
Did you say you intercut 1/8?
Half and quarter on this one.
Now, I know it happened fast. I know it was dark. Are you sure?
Sorry.
The wide is the half, actually. Yep. And the tight was using some pretty longer, like a 135, so that was needed to go lighter and went to an 8.
You don't get him, I'm gonna get him myself.
Good to know.
So this is black fog.
Yeah, well, whose tools do you think they are?
Marvin keeps them in the trunk.
Yeah. Every now and then I like to make myself useful.
Mm-hmm.
Oh. Bring it again.
It's a 9mm, just like the casings they found.
All right, let me set up the next clip before we play it, because these scenes are so short that I won't even have time to talk about it. It'll be over. The next one is a motel scene. I went with, this is the one where I started with night fog and bumped it back down to black fog. On the tight shots, the B camera, so let me start with the A camera. We're on a half black fog, and then we're in a situation with a really bright window, and B camera was facing the window a bunch of the time. So the quarter was too heavy, but then the 1/8 was not doing enough for the skin tone. So we're gonna have one of my leading ladies from our show that always needed a certain level of filtration throughout the show. I used a lot of sort of more invisible filters, like Classic Saw, Black Magic, some Mitchell A. But in this case, the 1/8 wasn't enough, and the quarter was too much. So I used an eighth black fog plus an eighth pearlescent on B camera, and that was being intercut with the A camera. And the reason I used a pearlescent is sometimes she would have dark circles under her eyes, and the pearlescent lifts the black level. So I would actually be using the filter to sort of boost some exposure into the dark circles on her face. So, and also when we would do that, because the pearlescent boosts the black level, the DIT would be basically grading the contrast back in. So that's what we'll be looking at here.
PD, contact, hands, covering. Hands on the wall, hands on the wall. Move. Step down, covering. Hands behind your back.
Latrell Bascom?
Yeah?
I got some questions for you, Latrell.
Hey, what's up with you?
Nothing.
Hey, you seem moody.
This the conversation we need to be having right now?
All yours.
Hey, did I do something?
So yes, very quick scene. But I like to mix low grades of multiple flavors of filter very often, rather than taking a filter I'm already using and bumping it up a grade.
Close-up on her?
Okay, and then the last clip that you can prepare that one is all black fogs. It's 3 scenes in a row that flow together. We're going to play them all as a clip in a couple of different adjoining locations within the same space. And we used an eighth on A camera, which were the wider shots, and then a quarter on B camera. There is a shot in the middle of the sequence where you'll see an overhead shot in the stairwell. That was shot with an FX3, and that did not have a filter on it. But the rest of them, everything you're about to see is with black fog.
Why? Why no filter on the FX3?
The way that we were using FX3s in the show and how fast we were moving, we didn't bother putting a matte box. Basically, it was just like clipped into a clamp in the ceiling, and we didn't have time. You know, our builds for FX3s, we had a few different builds, and there was the super stripped down build that was like, you know, Sony zoom lens, no filters, no follow focus, etc. So frankly, I just didn't have time to build it out to get the filter on there. And frankly, I wouldn't have, because I'm starting to learn these filters, I wouldn't have been clear which strength to use for something that was a very wide shot, that I wouldn't have time to like climb up there and say, oh, that one's too heavy, switch it out. So I was basically just playing it safe by not doing anything.
Apartment's 4 boy.
The windows facing to the other side.
And there's an elderly woman that's next door in 4 Charlie.
ESU's cleared the floors.
Elevator shut down.
Affirmative.
Roof.
We got 2 snipers up. Aviation standing by.
Sanford, Bentley cover the rear staircase. We're good.
Let's go.
Down, rescuing guard in South Tower. Perp fled to the 4th floor stairwell.
Post 214. Covering, back it up.
I got you, Donnie. I got you.
Please don't move!
Central. Perp shot. South side, 4th floor.
7-4 CO, be right there.
Got it.
That's it. So as I mentioned, you know, the goal was to not be able to tell that it looked filtered. I just didn't want it to look clean. So a lot of times when I use diffusion filters, since I use a lot of different kinds, you know, the goal is to not be able to tell that you're looking at anything. And then sometimes when we pull the filter away, everyone's like, ew, you know, like it's harsh in comparison. It's like if you don't juxtapose it next to something that's unfiltered, you don't even necessarily know that it's filtered.
Yeah, there is something that I want to add is as we can see on your clips, this is a good way also to make a very new lens vintage, where you have a vintage feeling in the highlights, you have very subtle elation. So this is because the day I did those tests, actually, I also did a test of a Tokina Vista, but with a different coating. They have a different vintage offer, and I was really surprised to have the same kind of elation in the vintage Tokina Vista than with a black fog filter, on the highlight. So, yeah.
That gives me an idea if I ever had a reason that I was intercutting modern lenses and vintage lenses to do a little test of throwing like an 1/8 black fog on a modern lens next to an older lens and see if that would help bridge the look.
I'm not taking that trap. I'm not talking about lenses. It's not going to happen right now. No, but thank you for that, and thank you all of you for being here today. And please hang around. Jendra's doing a wonderful panel on Steadicam. So thank you all for being part of this, and it was a great education for me. I appreciate it.